And welcome back to Miniature Dragon Comic Review, coming to you live from Seattle, Washington. As always, I'm your host for the evening, Daniel Doc Gentry, and with me is Woody and Alex. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey,
Hello, Doc.
Hello, Dr. Nick. How's it going?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing awesome. Alex gave me like an awesome Christmas gift. It's
oh,
the original metal miniatures from 2E.
oh, where'd you find those?
Trade secret.
The drawer on your desk, right?
It was the complete set.
Wow. Wait, how many miniatures was that?
What, three, four, so about 12?
Oh, wow. I would have thought they would have made more.
In that box set.
Yeah, in
Hmm.
that box set.
There was a shop that used to be in Lake City that had like a massive game store before it shut down, and they had like all the Rips miniatures, and they weren't that much money. And I keep thinking I wish I'd gone back and bought them. This place was just full of all this stuff that was just ancient that nobody was buying, and they just had it there, like old Star Trek spaceship miniatures from Starfleet battles, and just you name it, everything.
But anyways, so we will have an episode before Christmas, so we don't have to worry about all the Christmas stuff. I just wanted to brag that I got this super cool gift. So let's get jumping right in. This week we're going to be talking about Paper Girls and Paper Girls Only, the first graphic novel that is the theme from Woody this month for some reason. And Woody, you want to give us some history?
Well, this is kind of following in. We've been doing a lot of Brian K. Vaughan books lately, and it's his one of his most recent series, and it's one that I when you download these trades from Image, they often have like a little stinger at the end. It's like the first 5 or 6 pages of some book that they want to push, and that's one of those ones where I read that in like 3 or 4 books that I had downloaded, and it didn't really hook me, and like whatever, and then I read a bunch more of his stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I should pay more attention to this guy. And so I actually downloaded the whole book, and you know, wow, it's a hell of a story. Paper Girls is very similar to Stranger Things, in that it takes place back in the '80s and is really pushing the '80s nostalgia really hard. And it deals with these 4 girls that were basically running a paper route, kind of like right before that started to come to an end. And it's a weird sci-fi story because they haven't revealed what's going on exactly yet, but somehow the neighborhood where they're in becomes kind of like a conflux of interdimensional BS and time travel stuff, and it looks like they got sucked into some sort of a pocket dimension that it's kind of like the upside down from Stranger Things. But it's essentially this '80s nostalgia story where these kids have to run around and fight to survive. And I'll be damned if I didn't enjoy the hell out of it once I actually read it.
Well, Alex, why don't we jump right in and hear about your 3 matrices of this one?
Sounds good. So, typography, I thought nothing stood out as bad. But then again, I'm not a heavy as grammatical as the two of you. So, like, it really has to stand out for like me to notice. So I would have to say it's like lettering and things of that nature. Nothing was irritating. Nothing was like, such a bad level, but there wasn't any kind of like real pizzazz, but at the same time, it was nice and consistent. I felt like I had no problem knowing that, okay, this is the character that's talking. This is the speech bubble that is going with this character. And the design of, there was I almost want to say alien language, or
Yeah.
there's a couple of characters in there. And I thought their font wasn't too bad of a choice. It had enough of like, there's a couple of scenes within the comic where you kind of get the feel of what they're talking about, kind of like that, like wait or whoa, or something is happening, but not exactly what the words are.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really neat aspect to this book was it didn't have that um, you don't speak this alien language, but we're going to have it as uh, galactic standard, and everybody speaks English after all.
Mhm. I actually thought it was an interesting touch that all the sound effects were done by the artist, which
Mm.
which is, you know, if anybody's made comics, that's one of the things that can be a very tricky thing to do, because
Well, especially because there's like a consistent look across the book. Because I remember when we were doing Thunder Frog,
Mhm.
there was a lot of times that Tayson would do these beautiful like sound effects that were part of the art because, well, obviously they were.
Yeah,
And then, you know, if you do any sound effects, you're doing it electronically with
it does.
Adobe Illustrator. So it becomes very apparent that it's like this almost disconnect of like these two different styles.
And it's very tricky because you can't always predict where the sound effects are going to go or what they're going to be. Sometimes you don't know until you see the final art, and then you see the final art and go, oh my goodness, we needed something there, and it's you know, you kind of got to go one or the other, you know,
Right.
and it takes a lot of planning in advance to do it all with the artist, and I actually found it very interesting that the artist is the one that was doing it.
Now, as continuing on with the art, going into that, I actually do love a lot of the coloring. This actually does have a real kind of 80s feel to it.
Mhm.
The color tones that they pick has a palette that really emulates that kind of 1980s kind of feel. I mean, I felt like it was something that could have been really in that time period as something illustrated.
Did you look?
Um, hmm?
Did you look at the faces really close? Well, the thing about that, I thought, well, I actually wanted your take on that because if you look at the faces, you notice the lips have black outlines, but the noses and the eyes were brown. The inking was
Hmm.
brown. Like it gave it a completely different look and feel. It almost made it as if made it look like the lips stuck out further, like made almost kind of a spoofed you into thinking the face was three dimensional.
Hmm. I
Yep.
guess on my screen I didn't notice that enough.
Yeah.
Need a better resolution on my next monitor or something.
Right.
Um,
Bring it up.
as story went, I didn't think it was too bad. I mean, it didn't really totally engross me in comparison to some of his other works. I would still have to say, like, um, I definitely enjoyed Last Man a little bit more than this, and some of the other properties more so. But this was still like not a bad book at all.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking at it right now. The nose and like the upper and lower part of the lips are a different color, and the eyes and the mouth are black, and the eyebrows, and the knuckles are a different color too.
That's
Very interesting.
that's from beating up aliens, yo.
Doc, what was your take on the book?
I okay. So the art was actually really cool. It was interesting. It wasn't what I would expect from a comic book, but it's what I would expect from older comic books. Which that nostalgia for me is awesome. Bring me back. Let me see those things. You know, enough detail in the face to give me what they look like. My brain will do the rest. Nothing super intricate, so it was awesome for that. I agree with the color palettes and how they chose it. Like it looked like bad parachute pants from the '80s, and I was a kid in the '80s, so I remember those very well. And I didn't like the tropes of the characters. It was like each person represented somebody else from the '80s. I don't know how else you could do it, but that's what it felt like to me with the characters, the way they were drawn and the way they acted in the story. You know, the one girl was smoking, but she's the bad girl with the golden heart. And then there's the new girl who all our parents hate our neighbors hate their parents and blah blah blah. And there's this whole weird thing that I saw starting with it, but it is what it is. The lettering, it's of course I wanted to mention about the alien language. I thought it was cool because they committed to it all the way through. And I didn't have a chance to break the code, but it looks breakable. It looks like they were staying true to the language that they had created. They weren't just putting random symbols in. And story-wise?
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it's like, it definitely felt like you could take a cipher, and if you knew how, what the representation of these symbols were, you could represent it with our alphabet.
Oh yeah, and it was made me curious to see if it would be worth taking the time to find out what they said, if that would open up more to the story. There was another thing I thought was interesting, where you had two different groups of people from different time periods, I'm assuming, and you had the other people that were talking different. You could understand what they were saying, but it was like the use of words was different, and the use of punctuation was a little different, and it was just like, it kind of read as if the language had evolved.
Well, it kind of reminds me of, like, if you studied English in its various forms, medieval English, Shakespearean English, modern English has changed within various pronouns, nouns, verbiage, within the way that certain things are spelled even. It's just an interesting part of, like, I think it's a neat part of, like, this could be the future, you know, that these individuals are coming from.
I kind of wonder if you took somebody from 200 years ago and they were talking to one of us, if that's how we would sound to them.
Which one of us? I can adapt.
Well, we all can, Doc. What did you guys think of the Marshmallow Monster?
Well, all right. So before you get into Marshmallow Monster, I'm going to be the odd man out. I'm not hooked on the story.
Really? You didn't like it at all?
It felt like a bad trip version of Stranger Things without the... I don't feel as vested in it like I did with Stranger Things Season 1.
Yeah.
And I love Brian. I love his work. This is probably not the best. This isn't saga worthy to me. This isn't really good. But I didn't get myself hyped up because people do great work on certain things and not so good on another. This just felt like... Again, I like the language. I like the concept of it. I guess I just wish it was... I don't know. It did not get me. It was an interesting story, don't get me wrong. It was fun. But it wasn't like, I'm going to run out and buy this fun. I'm not that invested in it. Sorry, Brian, if you're listening to this. I love your work. I usually love your work a lot. I'm just not all in on this one.
I got to the end of the first graphic novel, and all I wanted to do was buy the next one, which I think was a good sign for me. Like, I just couldn't because, well, one, I've got other books I'm trying to read at the moment, and I didn't really have the budget to go drop another $13. But, goddamn, I really want to read the next one really bad. I want to know what happens.
I am happy where I am with the story.
Okay, so what do you guys think of the Marshmallow Monster? This.
Yeah.
Turn my screen down. I thought it was a really. Well, yeah, good. Yeah, I know, right? Smooth move, X-Lax, is that what they say?
So he actually has an iPhone, everybody.
Yeah, that means I can change. Anyways, that thing, with the sphere.
You called that the Marshmallow Monster?
Yeah, because
it had little TV screens and wires coming from a big massive ball producing electricity. Your brain went to marshmallows.
Well, my mind, not my brain. But anyways, it looks like there's a bunch of marshmallows coming out of the tentacles. That's really and they're all got eyeballs on it. Like, this is a weird design for a creature. What is it doing?
It left Saga and came here.
That did
it's
not
a guest experience. I don't know.
You roll a D10 when it hits to see what tentacle is actually going to actually fire.
They're being attacked by a beholder.
Marshmallow beholder.
Yes. Well, it was interesting because it made her experience her life, and it was just her sitting playing Breakaway over and over and over again, which was interesting. That actually I found interesting because I had that game system when I was a kid, and I had that game. And I loved the hell out of it until it burned out. By the way, fun fact, those old Atari games, by the way, So we had one of those things that had 4 games programmed into it. It was right before cartridges, right? We played that thing until it burned out, and then the television that we had, this old color TV, eventually failed. One of the ones with the record player on the top of it. My dad gave it to my mom's cousin, so he could take it apart in their electronics class and mess around with it. It turned out that those specks of intense light that were the balls in the game had etched into the back of the TV screen. There was all these lines where our little thing had been.
It was plasma before plasma.
Yeah, it was so intense. Of course, everything's all full color now. So, and even on regular, cathode ray tubes, that doesn't happen. But it was thought that was so interesting that those games literally destroyed the television.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. It was fun to read. I'm glad you enjoy it. I'm glad that you want to see what happens next. I don't know if it was expectation versus reality for me, because he writes Saga and I love Saga and I fell in love with it. I was telling Alex, we played a game on Friday night, and I was telling him, I at that point read a quarter of this thing because I didn't want to go further. I couldn't force myself to continue with the story. Really? I actually read the rest of it, what's the word I'm looking for? Half-assedly today. It just didn't. A comic book for me, it's not about how it ends; it's about how it starts. It's about the story. You want me to get invested with something? Don't talk about Four Girls from the '80s. I can't relate. I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm not
That's possibly part of what it was for me too, because I, listening to different comic book podcasts. Where I'd first heard about this one is there were podcasts that girls were doing, and there's one I used to listen to that I enjoyed, and when it was still on, and they loved this, and it has struck me as one of those books that was written for girls, and I think, Saga has more cross appeal, but Saga is one of those books that definitely I think appeals to women as much as guys, which is really strong in the comic book industry. And this one I think may have been specifically written for girls, and it does seem to appeal to that demographic more. And when I had first read the first 6 or 7 pages, there was nothing about that hooked me. But you also weren't reading the first full issue, and I think that if I had, if I'd read the first issue and not just that stinger, that they put at the end of those graphic novels I was downloading, I probably would have been a lot more interested. And I certainly, by the time I hit issue 3, I was pretty hooked on the story. It's leaving a lot of mysteries. Granted, it didn't hook you, but for me, you're dealing with this very heavy sci-fi storyline. You're dealing with dimensional travel or parallel realities. Definitely, there's a time travel element. They're definitely hooking on like the 80s fear of nuclear war and little bit of Planet of the Apes business there, and it's just like all these elements, yet they're there, but they're not being explained how they all go together. And for me, the mystery of that was a perfect storm.
I like that part of it. I do. I like the little things about this. Again, it's just, I don't know. It's just one of those things. I thought it was a neat story, but then it felt like a Mod Podge, like Star Wars meets Stranger Things meets Goonies meets Paperboy the video game meets, it was just a lot of stuff, a whole bunch of fluff that's irrelevant to anything and doesn't make anything for the story, a lot of characters and their backgrounds and their tropes that don't mean anything. Heck, you met the one girl's stepmom for like a page and a half, and she had to be an alcoholic that her dad met at an AA meeting, and oh, well, thank God you added that little thing in there. What did that have to do with something?
That was just where they went to find the gun, and
oh, so only alcoholics have guns. I see where it relates now. That's what I'm talking about. It means it's one of those things in the story where you're like, interesting, but why? And other things could have been. I understand there's a lot of mystery to this, but you have these people they call the old timers, these teenagers, that's what they call themselves, and both of those seem to be from a different era. One of them talks about breaking curfew. It's a really weird coded message. Obviously it doesn't mean what they're actually saying, but that's how it's coming across. You understand one where you don't understand the other. They're both using the same things. They're zapping teenagers. You get these really weird, again, yay, I guess. It was cool, don't get me wrong, but I just wasn't. This isn't something where I got to the end of this and I was like, I made it to the end. Good, I did what I told Woody I would do.
I'm curious if the people running on the dinosaurs are actually the villains.
I don't care.
Work with me, Doc. We got 10 minutes to fill. I'm trying to get a conversation out of you.
And you're getting a conversation out of me. It's a lot longer than it would have been if I agreed.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's one of those things in stories where we have enough fear mongering going on with the news and everything else that's going on in the world. And again, when I open up a comic book, I expect a little bit of reality to bleed over, but I don't want to deal with reality. And I definitely don't want to deal with old reality based in Stranger Things, based in Star Wars, based in Goonies, with a little touch of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Alex, what do you think? You've been silent.
Well, now that I can have a word in edgewise.
Yeah.
So I would have to say it's like, as this story goes, it wasn't as compelling as Saga and The Last Man. But as a comic book goes, it wasn't too bad. I mean, there has been a couple of others within the series that we've been doing for this 41 episodes that we've done that have been real stinkers. But this is like kind of a middle ground. If didn't know anything about this, of like who created it, it's an all right story for the most part. I mean, there are some various tropes to it, and I do get what you're saying, Doc, but there are some things that are kind of engaging, like how you made mention, Woody, about the things kind of in the background. Mm-hmm. I almost kind of feel like the four main characters are just there as the experience of like the same thing as like Neo from the Matrix. He is part of the audience, and you learn of what's going on through Neo. Like when Serenity says, or not Serenity, Trinity says EMP, and then Neo says, "What's that?" Yeah. You know, electromagnetic pulse. And, you know,
and you're like, you're a hacker in real life, and you can't figure out what an EMP is. You're like, sorry, there's a lot of things you don't want to get into the Matrix.
No. And I mean, I get there. There's that kind of fine level between that level of making sure that the audience knows and how dumb your character actually is. And that is a kind of like point, you know, like, I know Kung Fu. Wow.
Well, their characters.
But my point within this is like, I think the elements outside of the four main characters are really interesting. In the, where do these people come from? Why does this one group call themselves teenagers but look like they're mutants from the byproduct of Sloth from Goonies, and you know, give them a baby Ruth, and on top of it you got the elders from the old folk society that are hunting down teenagers to get their sweet nectar of youth or something, and they're riding dinosaurs. So I mean, that really makes them sound like they're really old, because they're a bunch of dinosaurs, you know, gathering up the youth. So what's going on that? And then the Stay Puft Marshmallow guy, as you call it, the Beholder plus 10 to eyes, is you know, what was going on with that? You know, the seek and destroy Matrix thing that was, you know, and does it give you a flashback of your life when you're just only doing video games and that's all your entire life? Or was that the simple fact of like her getting choked to death? Well, you know, so there are some questions within it, and I think it's the story behind the story that's more interesting. Like, these are just characters to bring in part of the audience, and if the audience is mostly a demographics of younger women, great. You know, that's just how it is. In comparison to, say, like Saga, where you've got that level of mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, lovers, and a bigger demographics. But I wouldn't say this is a bad story. I just don't think it's as interesting as it could have been in comparison to some of the other products.
I hope I didn't come off saying it was a bad story. And I want to be really clear.
No, and
it's a decent
I'm
comic
just saying
book.
kind of like my own thoughts on this.
Okay. Because it is a decent comic book. I want to say, and it measures in all three matrices well. It's just the story itself was not compelling to me, and it seems like there's a lot of stuff throwing into it that possibly down the line that he'll explain, but it looked like they were just trying to shove too much together. That was what I was trying to get at.
This kind of reminds me of like this graphic novel would be kind of like Act 1 of a movie.
Yeah.
And it's just enough of a setup to get you engaged, hopefully, so that you'd be willing to see Act 2 and Act 3. Or whatever amount of...
I'm just rooting for the guys on the dinosaur right now.
What's that?
I'm just rooting for the guys on the dinosaurs. Like, zap them all! Let's move this on.
My thought on it is that the guys riding the dinosaurs are here for some other reason, and the mutant guys from The Hills Have Eyes, are just happen to take advantage of it, and they're not actually part of it. They're just because that's what they said is they go back in time and collect stuff that looks valuable, right? So I think
unless they break curfew.
Yeah, well, I think curfew means something different to them than it does to us. And but it's like the local people aren't supposed to be there, and I think that they're being captured, ending up in those tubes. They're doing something. I don't know. I'm really interested to find out. I had a good time reading the book, and I'm definitely gonna get the second one. I'm looking forward to it. I'm almost done with Why the Last Man, and this will probably replace it. I mean, that's oh my God, Why the Last Man? Holy shit, the issue I just read.
Hey, we're not doing that one.
Yeah, I know, but it's oh my God, what a gut wrencher.
Final thoughts, Alex.
Have to say, if you like aspects of art that emulate very much of the 80s and has a bit of that kind of sci-fi feel, this might be up your alley. It's not a bad read. It wasn't something that really majorly appealed to me, but I would definitely say check it out for yourself and enjoy.
Woody?
Well, for me, it's a 5 out of 5. I mean, like if you enjoy Stranger Things, I think you would probably enjoy this book. I mean, granted, it's possibly...
I didn't really majorly enjoy it, and I enjoy Stranger Things.
I'm just saying my opinion, Alex. I mean, it is quite clearly written to appeal to young girls, but I think that there is definitely a real story there, and it's well thought out, and I'm interested to see where it goes.
And so far we know that Woody needs therapy because he's relating with something that's supposed to be relatable. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. It is a decent comic book. It has a fun story to it. It's not my cup of tea, but again, as I said in the past, you may enjoy this. I was just giving you guys my opinion of something that was happening, and none of the pictures were flipping through all that. So let me go these while we're doing this last little bit here. It's not my cup of tea. There's a lot of stuff that I don't like to see that happened with this book. It was like just things. And it's just me. I'll be honest with you. It was things in the story that made me go, I really don't want to read this. It may be because I have PTSD from some memory that I put away from the 80s. Maybe I was a young paper girl in the 80s and my memories have been replaced and now it's different. I don't know. It's just me. It is a fun comic book. It has some interesting points to it. And I do see why, especially Woody, I see what you're talking about, like wanting to see the next episode. It just frustrated me so much I don't want to, but it would be neat to read the next comic book if I could get out some of the stuff and just get to the stuff that I want to get to. Like, my heroes, the guys on the dinosaurs and, what they're doing. And it probably would have been over already if they would have just let them zap everybody. But
I think it would make a pretty interesting TV show.
And don't forget about God wearing the Public Enemy shirt in bed answering the phone.
He's not God. He's just the guy in charge.
Yeah, same thing. Anyways, anything new? We're going to get out of here.
Well, we're going to be post some new pages on Wednesday. And, we still have the web hosting problem, but, pages are going up every week. at miniaturedragon.squarespace.com.
We will fix that so that we'll have a shorter thing soon.
Well, we have to. Emerald City Comic Con's coming up. I can't print out thousands of pieces of promo and have bad web links.
Yeah, you can.
I did that. Yeah.
You can. You say can't, but I've seen people do it, so it's possible.
Yeah, we did, and it was a disaster. So we're not going to have that disaster twice.
All right, everybody. Read more comics. Keep it nerdy. And live your dreams.